In this video, we'll tackle adding materials to the remaining objects in our bowling alley scene. As a carryover from the previous video, I'll be using a file named Bowling Alley for materials. You can find it in the Working Files folder for this chapter. Let's go ahead and close the render and we'll apply a material to the bowling ball. The skin we apply will have a design built in, so we'll want to map our surface. Let's apply a UVW map modifier, changing it over to spherical. Back in the material editor, let's select a clean sample slot, naming it bowling ball. Once we've done that, we can go ahead and apply it to the surface in the scene. For a pattern for our ball, let's jump up on the diffuse branch, then from the browser, choose bitmap. Staying in the Chapter 11 folder of the Working Files, let's look at the bowling ball image. Let's go ahead and load that on the sphere. Once in place, we'll also want to activate Show Shaded Material in Viewport. Let's now click on Go to Parent and we'll open up a larger viewing window. To add some shine, let's take both the specular level and glossiness to 35. Let's now close the viewing window, we'll zoom a little bit closer in and we'll render. The ball could probably use a little reflection. Back in the material editor, let's load a ray trace map on the reflection branch. Rendering again, you'll see the ray trace is currently set way too high. Let's bump that amount value down to around 15. Rendering again, we've got ourselves much more of a realistic look. To map the bowling pins, we'll close the render, select one pin, then zoom in by typing Z. The object, intending to have a map applied, will need to have mapping coordinates. Let's go ahead and apply a UVW map modifier. For the style and the shape of the object, let's change the mapping to cylindrical. Now, like you many times get when applied to a lathed object, the mapping will have to be reoriented. Down in the alignment section in the Modify settings, let's first click on X. With the mapping now having rotated to stand straight up and down, we can click on Fit. Okay, let's go back in the material editor and see what we can do about building a skin. Having run out of available sample slots, I'll simply put my mouse where 4 of them come together, then with the black hand slide things around. Choosing a clean slot, I'll name it bowling pin. Let's now apply the material to the selected object in the scene. Having done that, we can now jump up on its diffuse branch, choosing a bitmap. This time around, let's choose the map named bowling pin. This design will work ideal when wrapped around in a cylindrical fashion. Let's also turn on our Show Map in Viewport button. Why don't we go ahead and render that and see how it looks? Now, the pin might have a little shine. Let's do this. Back in the material editor, we'll go to our parent. To add a specular highlight, we'll take the specular level to 50 and the glossiness to 35. We might also want to add a little shine. Let's throw a ray trace on the reflection branch. If we go ahead and render, it'll probably be a little bit too reflective. Yeah, I'd say that indeed is. Let's lower the amount of the ray trace to around 8. Rendering again, we've got a much more realistic and believable reflection. Now, to map the other pins, let's close both the rendering and the material editor. Having a UVW map modifier already applied to one pin, we can simply drag and drop that modifier to the other 3. Back in the modifier stack on the right, I'll hold my mouse down on the UVW map entry, then drag it to another one of the pins. I'll repeat the procedure for the other 2 pins. With the other 3 now officially mapped, holding down the Control key, let's select all 3. Going back to the material editor, we can now simply click on Assign Material to Selection. There's the skins, and there's how they look in the render. Now, to apply a skin to the ball return, let's restore our perspective viewport to its original orientation. I'll then select the blue ball return object and hit Z. I'll then orbit around with the Alt middle mouse wheel to get a better look at the object. For this one, I'm thinking about maybe a dull black pebbled texture. Let's select a clean sample slot, naming it ball return. We can then drag and drop the material onto the object in the scene. Once we've done that, let's open a large viewing window. Now for the color, let's jump up on the diffuse color swatch. Using the value ramp, 6th one down on the right, we'll change that setting to 25. That'll give us a dark gray color. To add a little shine, let's take the speck level and the glossiness both to 15. Then for the pebbled texture, we'll add a noise map to the bump channel. On the noise, let's experiment with a couple of the different types. Currently, we're using the regular type noise. Let's see how things would look if we changed to fractal. How does the turbulence compare to that? With now knowing our options, let's return to the regular type noise. For the size, let's take that from 25 down to 5. Probably need to go a little smaller still, let's take that to 2. For the bump amount, let's drop that to 10. Back in the scene, we'll apply box mapping as a UVW map modifier style, and we'll render and see how things look. Let's make 2 additional changes. We'll increase the specular level up to 30. And we'll take the noise size down to 1. Rendering again, we've got the pebbled look that I was looking for. Let's close both of our windows and we'll return our viewport back to its original orientation. Okay, 2 more things to knock out, the scoreboard and the lettering. Let's first tackle the oval scoreboard. Leaving the render open, let's push the window to the right-hand side of the view. Then let's open up the material editor. Selecting a clean sample slot, let's name the material Scoreboard. Now the reason I left the render open is because I want to steal the blue color on the scoreboard and use it for my material color. To do that, let's again take advantage of right-clicking and using the eyedropper. With the right mouse button held down, hold the eyedropper over part of the scoreboard. When you're happy with the color of the color swatch directly above that, go ahead and let go of your right mouse. Hanging onto the blue color swatch, let's now drag that chip over onto the diffuse color swatch in the editor. When the Copy or Swap Colors dialog opens, we'll choose Copy. Let's now close the render and apply the skin to the scoreboard in the scene. Now we might need to lighten that up just a tad. Let's reopen the diffuse color swatch. Changing the value slider, continue pushing left or right until you get the color that you like. When happy with the color, go ahead and close the selector, then add a little shine. I'll take my specular level up to around 50. For the glossiness, I'll bump that up to 15. Rendering the scene, we're now picking up a nifty highlight on the edge of the oval scoreboard. Okay, last thing to do is to add a skin to our lettering. Let's grab a clean sample slot and we'll name it Letters. Being a little concerned about dragging and dropping to the wrong object, let's select the lettering in the scene. Now we can assure ourselves of a direct hit by using the Assign Material to Selection button on the horizontal row far left side. Let's now change our diffuse color swatch to a bright red. For that, I'll add all the red, then take out the green and blue. To make the sign glow just a tad, let's add some self-illumination. We'll take the setting up to 65. Now if you want to see the difference that makes, let's first render before changing the value. So there's the red lettering without the self-illumination. Let's now take that number to the 65 as mentioned. Rendering again, you can see the difference. In an upcoming video, we'll start adding light into the bowling alley area. Let's go ahead and save our scene up as Bowling Alley Materials Completed.